This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over different pool surface types. I'll go over the pros and cons of each. And if you're deciding to maybe resurface your pool or have a pool installed, I think you're going to find this interesting. If you service pools out there, it's always good to know about the pool surface types and the problems associated with them. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. From me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. And I'm sure if you do pool service, you've run into many of these surface types that I'm going to talk to you about here. I'm going to start with the traditional surface type. It's been around forever. The majority of your pools, at least in Southern California, and again, this is very regional because I know like places like North Carolina, there's a lot of in-ground vinyl pools. But here in California, maybe in the West Coast area, you're going to see a lot of plaster pools, Macrite. I just call them cement pools. It's kind of like the term we used to use back in the day. You know, you would have a neighborhood where they would drain the pool, and then you'd have the skateboarders in there. And it's basically like a skate park at that point. And plaster is a lot like cement in a way. And a lot of people still refer to it as a cement pool, but plaster is probably a more official term. Most pool pros nowadays call it a plaster pool. There is something to note about the white traditional plaster. So back in the era where we weren't really caring about environment, health, things like that. I remember my dad telling me a story when he was a kid riding his bike. They would be spraying bug spray. I think it was DDT, and they'd be riding their bikes behind the truck spraying everything. So there was one additive to the plaster that gave it that kind of pure white, and it gave it that durable surface that you see in pools in the 60s and 70s. If you have a white plaster pool that was built in the 60s, you notice that it's a pretty consistent color and it's very durable, because they used to put asbestos in the plaster mix, and you can't do that nowadays. I believe that product is banned everywhere. Interesting that asbestos is in a lot of products, and it's in, of course, the popcorn ceiling. Anything pre-1980 probably has asbestos in there. Brake pads have asbestos. Old heaters have asbestos panels. There was even asbestos put into certain drywall. So anything old has it in it. It's mainly used for several things. You can read about it yourself. But it was a product that was heavily used back then. It was almost like a miracle product until they realized that it caused like this really seriously bad lung cancer that's fatal. And so they stopped putting it in products. Well, one of the side effects now is that the white plaster mix is not great. In fact, most builders, I know in my area in California, won't even warranty a white plaster for defects because it's such a bad mix now. So white plaster is probably the most prevalent, and it's the most affordable. So a lot of people still go with it. You can, of course, go with colored plaster. That has its own kind of problems, and a lot of it has to do with modeling, etching, scratching. It doesn't look consistent. It's not going to be like if they wanted a gray plaster pool, it's going to be a nice gray looking pool like if it was painted. And that's the drawback with the colored plaster. So again, it's affordable. It's widely used. It's really easy for them to install it, and you can replaster the pool pretty easily to give it that brand new look. The cons again are it does have a lot of staining aspects to it. Even after an initial build, when they first put it in, it's kind of like your driveway. If you look at your driveway, you're going to have different discolorations, and anything that gets on the driveway, a nail or something like that, will stain it. Same with the plaster pool. And the surface can start to get rough over time, and that's something that you have to be aware of. The lifespan, I would say, if you look it up online, it says 8 to 12 years, but in most cases, you're going to get a good 15 to 20 years out of a plaster pool if it's maintained correctly. And it's going to, of course, require a little bit more maintenance as far as preventing stains and the like. Very similar to plaster, and you may get this confused, and you may even call it a plaster pool, but it could be a quartz pool. A lot of the colored pools now are quartz, and you're going to get a better color. It's a little bit of a more durable material than standard plaster, and I feel like it holds the color better than a colored plaster pool, in my opinion. And you're going to like the different color variations. You don't really see a lot of the crystal white quartz, or it's usually going to be a colored quartz, at least in my area. And it's fairly affordable. It's probably a little bit more expensive than plaster, of course. It's a little bit more chemical resistant than plaster. Not a lot more, maybe not any more than plaster, although they market it to be more resistant. And it can still stain, and you can also get uneven color in the quartz, just like plaster. So there really isn't a lot of difference between quartz and plaster, except quartz is a little bit better material, and it does hold the color better, in my opinion, over plaster. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Then you have the Pebble Finish, or Pebbletech, and this is all one company. They have the market on this. They have a great warranty, by the way, so it's a good surface type for that reason alone. It's very durable, and I think I didn't specify quartz, but it'll probably last a little bit longer than the plaster pool, where the Pebbletech pool will last anywhere from 20 to 40 years. I mean, I have some Pebbletech pools that are 40 years old, and they still look pretty good. The lifespan, if you look it up, is 15 to 25, but I think you're going to get a lot longer out of there. It's really nice because you'll get a uniform color. So if you pick a certain color pebble, it's going to be more uniform than a colored plaster pool or a quartz pool, because they're using the color in the pebble, and it's going to be a much more consistent look than you're going to see with a plaster pool. The drawback, of course, with the fact that it's more consistent is that if there is a stain, it's going to be a lot more obvious in a Pebbletech pool than in a colored plaster pool. And it can be rough, especially the step areas, especially when it's first installed. You're going to find that it may be rough on certain areas. Again, the step areas especially, but the whole pool may be a little rough. I should mention that for a plaster pool as well, you're going to have a lot of plaster dust, and you may have some rough areas too. So if you have a customer that's going to use their pool and it just was plastered, or if it's a brand new Pebbletech pool, I would highly advise you to advise them to get the swimmer shoes. They're the rubber shoes that you put on. You can get them at the sporting goods store. And if the kids wear these while they're in the pool, I would even recommend having gloves on, maybe biking gloves or something, or some kind of gloves, because when they're pushing off the surface of the pool, because a lot of kids are going to be pretty rough in the pool. They'll be pushing off the surface. They'll be running around the pool playing Marco Polo. And I can guarantee you their feet and their hands are going to be all cut up because of the new surface. Now, over time, as the surface kind of smooths out, this won't be a problem. But in the first few months, I would advise them to wear those swimmer shoes and even have some kind of hand protection if they touch the walls a lot. I mean, for normal use, if you're in the pool for half an hour or 40 minutes, not a problem. But most people are going to be spending hours in the pool, especially if it's a new pool and especially if they're a kid. So that's another thing about the Pebbletech, is that it's a little rougher, and you may find you don't like the surface type. If you have a builder that you're working with in the area, go to a Pebbletech pool that he's done and rub your hands in there, and you'll see if you actually like the surface. It's much more expensive than the plaster pool and quartz pool. And I think it's also another drawback to the Pebbletech is that if there's a lot of calcium buildup, if you have high calcium content in your water, or if you're not watching the LSI and it gets scale forming, you're going to see a lot of white areas in the Pebbletech. This is just calcium building up on top of the rocks because it's basically a river rock. And so you're going to see the calcium much more pronounced in a Pebbletech pool than you would in a Plaster pool. And you're going to see a lot of white areas, especially on the slopes of the pool, the step area, maybe even the spa of the pool. And that's just calcium buildup. The best way to cure that is to fully drain the Pebbletech pool and not acid wash it because that's not going to remove any of the calcium, but bead blast the entire Pebbletech surface. If this sounds like a lot of work, it is. And if it sounds expensive, it is expensive because bead blasting your tile line is pretty expensive by itself. Bead blasting an entire Pebbletech pool is pretty expensive. So in that is the fact that it does get a lot of calcium buildup, and the way to cure that is to drain it and bead blast that pool and clean the tile just as if you were to clean pool tile. You're cleaning the calcium off of the pebble. Some of the newer surfaces like the polished aggregate, hydrazo, and beadcrete, they're relatively new in my area. You don't see a lot of these, but it is a really smooth finish. It's a lot smoother than the Pebbletech, and it's really an attractive finish, and it has a long lifespan. It's going to be really expensive, and the surface can be a little bit slick, and it needs to be polished by an expert. And it's, of course, susceptible to scale and from chemical imbalance over long periods of time. And if there's any kind of acidic water that you're using, or if the pH gets too low, it can damage the surface as well. Then you have the vinyl liner pool, which I like the vinyl liner pools, the in-ground vinyl liner pools. And again, they're popular back east. It's a much more affordable pool to put in. You dig the hole, you put the frame in, then you put the liner in, put some sand in there, almost like with the above ground pools with the sand on the bottom. And then you have this vinyl fabric that's stretched out across the pool. And I like the feel of it. It's soft on your feet, soft on your hands. And of course, it's easy to maintain because it doesn't have a high acid demand. And you're not going to have to put a lot of acid into that pool surface type. And it holds chlorine a lot better too as well. Mainly because I think the pH stays pretty stable and the chlorine is much more effective. So you're going to find that the vinyl pool does hold chlorine a lot better than a Plaster or Pebbletech pool. The cons are, of course, is that it can tear. So if you have pets swimming in there, their nails can cut it. Any sharp toys can cut it. You can patch one of these pools pretty easily, but you don't want to tear the liner because you could lose all the water pretty rapidly. They can also stretch and come unhooked from the side of the pool, the coping. So if you have vinyl pools on your route, you probably have seen some areas where the vinyl liner is stretching and coming off of the coping, where it's kind of stuck in there. And they also stain very, very easily. So if you put any kind of cal hypo on the bottom, any kind of trichlor on the bottom, any kind of nails fall in there, the staining is pretty permanent and pretty bad. You can bleach the surface pretty easily with granular chlorine. And the pH tends to drift downwards in these pools, so you don't want to use trichlor tablets in them because there's not much of an acid demand for the surface. You're going to have low pH a lot versus high pH. But I like the surface. Again, it's affordable, and the lifespan of the vinyl liner is maybe 7 years, 8 years. So you have to replace the liner. It's not super expensive, $3,000 or $4,000 for a really good liner, maybe even less in some cases, depending on the pool size. And I do like the in-ground vinyl liner pools versus the above-ground pools. So if you're having one built, the in-ground is much more permanent. You can't really have an attached spa to it, another drawback. So with the cement Plaster pools and the Pebbletech pools, you can have an attached spa because you're building the entire project as one unit, and the attached spa can be put in there with the pool install. With the vinyl liner, you can't do that. Now, I have seen some fiberglass pools, I'll talk about that surface type next, where they have had some detached spas, and I think there are some builders that do attached spas now as well. But the fiberglass pools come in two different configurations. One, it's almost like building an entire regular pool. You do the pool surface, you do the gunite, and then you put the fiberglass coating and the coping, and it's like almost like building a regular pool. And for those pools, you can put an attached spa, no problem. Those are pretty popular in my area, where you have The construction very similar to an in-ground pool, except the final phase is not plaster, but is a fiberglass coating or gel coat. And then you can put an attached spa. I love the feel of fiberglass. It's really smooth. Can be a little slippery, so be careful. Can be dangerous. But it is a smooth surface, and I think it has the same properties as the vinyl pool as far as holding chlorine better because the pH is stable. And you'll notice that the fiberglass pool has a very low acid demand as well, very similar to the vinyl pool. And so you don't want to use trichlor tablets in a vinyl or fiberglass pool for that reason, because the pH is going to drop rapidly. I'm not sure if I mentioned it with the vinyl pool, but since the trichlor tablets have a pH of about 2 or 2.7, if you use those in a vinyl pool or fiberglass pool, the extra acid that's being added to the water is lowering the pH down, which causes the pH to get into areas that are pretty dangerous for the equipment and for the bathers. So no trichlor tablets for those two surface types. Again, they hold chlorine better in my opinion, so tablets aren't necessarily needed in those pools. You can also put a saltwater generator in these pools as well. Same with, of course, the Pebbletech and Plaster pool, so they are compatible with the saltwater generator. Now, the fiberglass pool can stain, but you can actually lift stains off the fiberglass pool a little better than a vinyl pool. You can use ascorbic acid to get any kind of metal staining off in most cases, and you're going to find that the fiberglass pool surface is going to be a uniform color throughout. And so if you wanted like a pure white plaster pool, the fiberglass is the way to go. They also have colored fiberglass now, and it's going to be a pure color because it's a piece of plastic, basically like a surfboard, and you're going to have the ability to color it and keep that color consistent. So I do like the fiberglass pools. The other type of fiberglass pools, I mentioned the ones that are built in. You can also drop one in with a shell. You dig the hole, a crane comes over the house, and they drop in the fiberglass pool like a giant bathtub, basically. It's almost like having one of those fiberglass spas in the ground, and they drop it in. So they're really cool, and they're really affordable, and I do like the plaster, the fiberglass pools, sometimes even over plaster pools, because of the feel and the consistency of them. The gel coat does wear off over time, and so if you have one of those built-in fiberglass pools that I mentioned, and you're brushing it and a bunch of white powder comes off the side of the walls, that's a sign that the gel coat is coming off and it needs to be sprayed again with fiberglass. There's no cure for that. You just don't want to brush the pools in that case, because every time you brush the pool, more and more of the white powder comes off, and then you can get cracking in the fiberglass shell itself over time. So that's a drawback. I don't see too much of the gel coat coming off of the ones that are dropped in with the shell. Those are pretty durable. And the ones that are built in are the ones that they actually spray the fiberglass onto them, and that's why it fades, or it actually comes off over time, versus the ones that are dropped in with the crane in the backyard. And then the last pool type that's not very common at all is the tile pool type. And this is a completely all tile pool. I have maintained some of these before. They're pretty cool. I don't think they have a very high acid demand as well, because they're made out of ceramic tiles. And they really are a really unique way of building a pool, a unique look. They feel really nice on your feet as well. It's almost like if you go to a hotel and they have the tile on the bottom of the shower. Very similar feel to that. It's extremely expensive, and that's why it's not done that often. And it has to be done by a builder that knows what they're doing. And I've seen some of these tile pools that were done by people that wasn't their specialty, and you're going to see some inconsistency with tiles coming off, and maybe with poor tile choice, poor material choice, and the grout is not done well. So I've seen this done really well and done poorly. And a tile pool is a nice concept, but it is more of a luxury pool because of the expense of it, and it's something that you may want to consider, but I don't think many people do consider an all-tile pool. It's just something that's not right on their radar a lot, and again, it is pretty expensive to have this done. So that's kind of an overview of the surface types, and I think whichever surface type you pick, there's always going to be pros and cons with each surface type, and there's certain surface types that I like better than others. And I think if you do pool service, of course, you're going to get familiar with all these surface types out there, and you should know what you can use on surface types, what you can't. For instance, you can't use a stainless steel brush on a vinyl or fiberglass pool. You'll damage the surface of that pool, and little things like that are good to know, and you should know this before you service the pool with a surface type, and you should know the surface types, pros and cons. You can explain that to your customers as well. Looking for other podcasts, you can find those easily by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Every Monday through Friday, I post one there. And you can also find a list of over 1,600 podcasts on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu with other podcasts you can listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.